today on another episode of Coffee with Yvonne, a show for creatives and entrepreneurs with someone I actually know in real life. And I know I say that about a lot of people, but I actually do know her in real life. I have the event extraordinaire herself, Miss Tahirah Bailey Reed, on the show today. And how we are connected, just to give y'all a quick story time. We are connected because my college bestie is her childhood bestie, Danielle. And we met. I forgot how we met, but I liked her. And I was like, she's good people.
You know what? It was the Super Bowl weekend, I believe. So look at that.
We're having her today on for coffee to chat about her area of expertise of being the founder of Bailey Reed Events and talking about small events, big impact, measuring success beyond the head count. So grab your coffee and let's chat. Cheers, friend. Cheers.
Thanks.
Yeah, clink, clink. And Danielle, if you're gonna watch this episode, don't talk about my nails, okay? I need to put that point up there first because she will say something about my nails. Ma'am, you need to get your nails done. I know.
Just like her, Mia.
But to read your bio, Tahirah Bailey Reed is an event strategist and the founder of Bailey Reed Events, a Washington, D.C. based event planning firm that helps government agencies, nonprofits, and corporate organizations use events as a strategic tool, not just a line item. Over the past decade, Tahirah has led the planning and execution of high-impact conferences, fundraisers, retreats, and multi-day convenings across the U.S. from D.C. boardrooms to ocean views in Honolulu. I know that's right. You better get an ocean view. Okay. Her work spans federal and local government programs, mission-driven nonprofits, and corporate teams, often managing complex stakeholder environments, compliance requirements, and high-visibility audiences. Many of her clients partner with her across multiple events over several years, relying on her to align. That's a corporate word, y'all, by the way. We love that. Align each experience with organizational goals, messaging, and measurable outcomes. Through intentional design, sponsorship strategy, and data-informed guest experiences, Tahirah has helped organizations collectively raise over $1 million in dineros while maximizing limited resources and increasing return on investment. Her approach centers on what happens because of the event: stronger relationships and brand trust, increased funding, and sustained engagement long after the room clears. Known for her calm energy, strategic leadership style, Tahirah is trusted by executive teams who want events that deliver results without creating internal chaos. Her philosophy is simple. When events are treated as strategy, not logistics, they become one of the most powerful tools organizations have to move people, priorities, and missions forward. And with that being said, welcome to Coffee with Yvonne. Okay, bio.
She sounds kind of good.
It sounds really good, actually. You should keep that. Keep that for your media kit because you need one.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get started to talk about, what inspired you to establish Bailey Reed Events. How did you use your personal experience to shape the kind of work that you do today?
Yeah, it's actually deeply personal for me. It started with my grandmother. She's no longer with us, but she always ingrained in me, R.I.P. Miss Cynthia. She ingrained in me that no matter how little we feel we have, there's always enough to share. There's always enough to give. And so I've always had that in the back of my mind as I moved through life, throughout my career, both the education part of my career, as well as as I was moving up the corporate ladder. But it never fully aligned because what I saw in the workplace and even in school was people looking out for themselves. Everything was dog eat dog. And it never really meshed. And so I was always lingering and longing for that moment where my work and the reason why I got up and out of bed every morning, my very comfortable bed every morning, served a purpose and made me feel good. And so as I moved throughout corporate life, because I'm a former corporate girly, I eventually was working with an organization. My title was accountant because that's what I studied in school. But the work I really did was project management. And one of my biggest projects was the annual conference that we would do every year. And that was the thing at my job that stressed me out the most. But I realized it was because it was a thing I cared about. I wanted people to come and have a good time. I wanted people to come and understand the organization. And I wanted the event to have ROI, all of the things. And so, like a lot of people during the pandemic, had some time to reflect and realize that I was going through some burnout and had been for a while, and that it was time to make a change and it was time to make my career match with the lessons that I had been taught growing up. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to take the work that I like to do and venture out on my own and have a greater impact through my work. And so here we are with Bailey Reed Events.
And, let's go back to the origin story, as I like to call it, because everyone has their why, right, behind their business or their personal passions. You mentioned Grandma Cynthia, God rest her soul. You mentioned Grandma Cynthia. Was she a kind of person who, was she the house in the neighborhood? Like, did everyone come over?
There was always space at the table. There was always food, and you were going to get fed. And so I like to imagine that she is in heaven just hosting all the dinner parties with all of her siblings and her parents that are there with her. They are just at that table playing music, eating food, and watching and guiding us from above.
Speaking about bringing the community together, how do you integrate that into your business? Because she was community centered, right? And you mentioned community being something that inspired you when you were in college or in the corporate space. How do you drive that into your business practices?
Yeah. So for my clients, I specifically work with mission driven organizations. If you are working and doing an event just to make some money, sorry to say, but also not sorry to say, I'm not the event planner for you, because there's more work to be done. And yes, you will spend the money and you can make money from it, but the real objective shouldn't just be the dollar sign. So I'm very selective with that.
And that is, to me, a good place to stand on, because I'm very similar to in how I work with people. I always want to make sure that my moral compass is as straight and narrow as it can be, and that I'm not compromising how I was raised, because Tahirah is similar to you. My grandmother was a huge influence in my life as well. God rest her soul. And I just think that when people lead with purpose, the business will always be there, right? Like, you don't have to compromise who you are to satisfy just a profit line. You should be able to move forward with integrity. So I'm glad to hear that your business is based in that. Now, thinking about in your business, like the early stages, like you just, you establish an LLC, you put the paperwork in, you're like, I am doing this. What did you realize that events could be more than just beautiful gatherings, that they could actually drive impact? Like, what was that aha moment when you were developing the framework or the workflows in that space?
It actually happened before I started the business, but I didn't connect the two. I hosted my first philanthropic event on my own personally back, I think it was around January 2020. I hosted a paint night for I think there were 15, maybe 20 of us at the table. It was in support of a friend's nonprofit that she had just started. And we were painting and sipping and eating and having a great time. And I kind of sat back and had a moment where I realized, wow, I brought all these people together. They're having a great time. And it's all in the name of a good cause that's supporting people. And I said, well, I could be doing this all the time. And then I ended up starting the business a year later, thinking of doing that for other people and for larger organizations. But it's always been in the back of my mind that it doesn't have to be super big. At that table of 15 people, between us, relationships were formed and people were able to connect. We actually had posted it on Facebook, and so a couple of strangers came, people that were strangers to us. Relationships and bonds were made from there. They also got to learn about the organization and from there share about the organization with other people. And so it just had exponential benefits of us just sipping and painting and having a good time.
So that's really interesting too, how you were inspired by a paint and sip event that brought the community together. And even though those 3 people on Facebook came and you didn't know them, you were able to establish a real in-life bond with folks that you connected with digitally in the social media space. When it comes to smaller in-person events, How can they support bigger marketing, fundraising, or brand engagement goals? Because sometimes that's a struggle, right? For these organizations, they don't know how to connect the tissue together, that bring that through line. So how can those smaller events still drive the company deliverables and strategic objectives?
I really love this question because I think that people think of events as one-off projects, and they are really part of the overall portfolio and objective. You can have a small dinner party with VIPs or influencers or specifically decision makers. I'll use a nonprofit as an example. So, say a nonprofit every year has an annual fundraiser. Their goal is to raise $50,000 with this fundraiser. That's happening in December. In January, you host a coffee meetup with 10 people, but be strategic with who you're inviting, right? Invite 10 people who you know have a network, who have influence, and talk about your mission, talk about your objective, talk about the event that's coming up in December and the amount of money that you want to raise. And then invite them to invite people to your next event. So, say next quarter or even next month, you have a somewhat larger event. Maybe this is a luncheon with a panel discussion, once again, about your organization, about your mission, what you do. And you invited your VIPs, as I like to call them, from your original coffee meetup to invite minimum 3 people. That way you get free admission or discounted admission into the luncheon. Now you've got what? If my math is right, 30 people at that luncheon at minimum, because you're still advertising to the public and to others, but now you've got 30 people at that table. Once again, you mentioned the overall mission. You want to raise the $50,000 in the fundraiser in December. You invite those people, those 30 people at the table, to invite 5 people to your next event, which is a slightly larger event. Maybe that's something like Talk Golf. You tell them, give them an incentive to share about the organization, and they invite a bunch of people to Talk Golf. Or even something with a smaller cost. You know, a lot of restaurants and fast food places like Jenny's Ice Cream or Shake Shack will do nights where you bring people in, and from the profit made from that night, you get a percentage of that to support your organization. So now you've got, what's the math there?
I stopped counting.
Now we've got even more people at that event. Once again, you share your mission and you say, we have a fundraiser in December. We're looking to raise $50,000 for everyone who showed up to our Shake Shack night. You can get a discounted ticket for every 5 people you invite. And now in your event, in the fundraiser, you have this built-in base of people who are coming, because even if only half the people who are at Shake Shack invite people, you still get a good number. And so that's how you use these smaller events to build for the greater mission.
Mm-hmm. You know, that makes sense, because to put my marketing hat on, what you're doing is you're creating community in those spaces, right? You are starting out with a smaller footprint, but then you are spreading the word through organic reach and audience engagement. And for the audience, it doesn't have to be something you spend $20,000+ on. I think that is a misconception when it comes to events. It needs to have impact, and it needs to feel authentic to whatever the organization is, to Tahirah's point. And even something tying in cultural experiences here, because I know you work with, I think you work with a Native American nonprofit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So it could even be something that ties in the culture of that organization, like, creating dream catchers or basket weaving, or learning about the history behind something else that makes people feel like they're part of something. And I also agree with you too about the invite only aspect. When it comes to content creators or people with influence, you don't have to have 30,000+ followers to have influence. You can have, there's a trend now, there's a trend now where people who have like 600 followers are now creating bigger digital footprints, because they're not seen as someone who has this huge space, but they know the right people or create the right content. And then finally, and the point that I'm making, as you continue to build on that, now you're capturing data for your listserv. You're not only just inviting these people, now you have their email addresses. Now you know how to get in touch with them. And now if they're choosing to share on social media, you actually have content that you can repurpose for future promotions, for any marketing materials or event materials that you have, to create like a B-roll, to create, some kind of, digital signage for the event, or something that can be used to show stakeholders or board members, because we all got to report to the board at the end of the year, to show them the value of what you're bringing to the table and how that ties in strategic objectives with what was achieved at that event.
Absolutely.
See, it all ties together.
I don't want to derail, but
Yeah,
my
derail.
something some of my industry peers and I are noticing is organizations seem to be confusing event planning and event marketing. And you'll see some proposals out, and you'll see, maybe some job descriptions out. They're looking for an event marketer, but the job description is finding vendors, ordering AV, menus, doing the venue contract. That's all the planning side of it. That's the logistics side of it. But what they're really looking for is somebody to make sure that people show up and then you have people in the seats. So event planning and event marketing are different, but they have to work together. I like to think of them like fraternal twins that actually kind of really look alike. So like Tia and Tamara, right? Up close, you can see there's a difference, but further back, they kind of look like they're the same. They stand on their own, but together, even better. Sisters.
Yeah, and that's very true too, because like in the space where in my full-time role, we have a very large comms and marketing department, and in that prong there is event marketing. And it's totally separate from what the meetings team does. And sometimes there's confusion between the meetings team, which are large conferences, and the event marketing piece, which focuses on marketing the meetings, but also the smaller regional conferences that need support in itself. And those are two different roles. They work together, sister, but they don't do the same exact thing. And I've also noticed too, in terms of respecting the amount of time it takes to do what you do, you just don't pop up onto a space, say, okay, throw a chair over there. That's cute. Okay, bye.
People's beliefs. Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah, and it takes months of planning, and at minimum, what would you say to here? Is it like 6 months ahead that you have to work at minimum to plan an event?
It depends on the size of event. I think minimum 3 months, but that would be for something smaller, but 6 months or more. I had a conference September of this year for over 200 people, but I started planning that last year.
People hear the number like 200, like, oh, that's not a lot of people. That means 200 pieces of material, set up for table and chairs, round, square, meeting style, searching event venues, making sure that things are done for the run of show. You have all the connections with the tech people, the staff, that things are being communicated from internal, because when you're not a full-time employee, you're hired as a consultant or a contractor, you're essentially getting filtered information from the organization. So you need to make sure you have everything you need to execute. That's also budget management.
Yep.
These things do not run cheap.
Nope.
At all. And the budget is always, especially in the creative space, and events is a creative field in my opinion. They look at the budget with a fine tooth comb, don't they? They're like, well, why do you need this kind of napkins? And you're like, it's only 20 cents. Thinking about too, when it comes to what you do, how do you incorporate giveaways in this space? Like when you think about these events that you host, like what are the takeaway items that you look at that will give impact to your audience? Like what are you looking for to put in those gift bags?
I like for my swag to have utility. I want it to be something that people are going to actually use, but I also want it to be on brand, right? Recently, I was working with a company that's launching an iced tea, and they have a glass bottle as well as an aluminum can. And as part of their giveaways, it was like a festival, outdoor festival. As part of the giveaway, they did some like silicone covers to go on your aluminum can, because once you open an aluminum can, you almost have to finish it
Mm-hmm.
because if not, then it goes flat. And so
Mm-hmm.
they had covers for that. And then, of course, branding and some cute slogans and whatnot on that. So I like useful things. I like things that are on brand. And I also like things that are smaller. For a lot of events, especially the ones that I do, conferences, people are traveling. So you need to leave them space, especially because people are most likely using a carry-on. Nobody wants to pay those baggage fees.
No.
So
No.
small, useful, and on brand.
I see a lot of times meetings are giving out the same thing. If I see one more pen, if I see one more tote bag,
You know,
like,
it's funny you
tell me,
say
Tahirah, what
that
is it?
because I've done some research and people still like pens because you never have one when you need it. And so it's kind of like, oh, I need a pen. Okay, I have that pen. And then, you have your branding on there. Oh, I got this at that conference.
That's fair. I think for me is I'm very particular about my pens. I like a good gel point. Like I like a good smooth one on the paper, not those little cheap ones where the ink is kind of like across the
Yeah.
paper.
And to your point, the better the pen, the more expensive.
And that's why I'm always like, "Oh, this is nice," and I just like, I'm just gonna take this while
Yeah.
I walk away with your stuff. So let's get into digital experiences at meetings. Digital, as you know, is integrated in so many things we do today. Now that AI is more common, social media is integrated in the strategic planning for a lot of businesses. How can organizations thoughtfully integrate digital experiences to extend their reach and lifespan of smaller in-person events without overcomplicating things?
So as always, you start with what your goal is in the end, right? And so for that example that I used about building on your events, that first one that I mentioned, which was the coffee, you could do that as a webinar, right? Webinars are great for intros, walkthroughs, demos, panel discussions, and then you record it, and then it's evergreen. And then you have it and you can share it. Like you mentioned, as collateral you can use on your social media. If it's something educational, you can use it and build a course out of it or have it on your website. You can put it behind a paywall, make some money off of it. And it's something that you'll always have. This podcast, as an example, we're recording now. It's going to be posted and it's there until you take it down, and people can share it through email, on social media, take clips from it, something that's evergreen and can continually provide ROI. And the cost, not that much.
And that's very smart because you just broke down more than one way that you can repurpose, things in a digital space. Said webinars, very smart, by the way. Webinars, putting it behind a paywall. Now you're getting people to sign up for, your listserv or subscribe to your platform that generates revenue, right? Using things like digital media kits where you can have video that's playing to explain the business or practices and things like that. That is also another way that events show value because now you're taking what has lived in essentially a 2D space where you have your website and things like that, and you're creating something that is like a 4D in-person experience or virtual experience that shows value. And that's also another way to hear that events drive purpose for businesses, because sometimes a newsletter is great, but it's nothing like engaging with your members or your followers in person and getting that real connective touch point between you and the other individual.
Right. And that's something that I've been picking up on, especially since we've gotten out of the pandemic. People are craving that in-person connection. And although webinars are great, we can use them as a tool to show people kind of what you missed out on, right? So if you have like an in-person event, I always encourage people to record parts of it and record maybe you're a keynote speaker, record the panel, but also show some of the audience reaction because that creates FOMO. Right?
Mm-hmm.
As you put it out there and you share, people go, oh, that looked like it was a really great event. And so for the next time, they're going to be checking out what else you have.
And then to put one more question in the mix before we get to our last question at the end of our interview, how do you create activations for smaller events that are like 200 or maybe 500 people? Like, how do you create like the backdrops or think through what those creative spaces could be to get them to share on social media or to gather for pictures and things like that? Like, what's your thought process?
I mean, the tried and true is your step and repeat. People that, especially if it's an event where they dressed up. Yeah, and people are looking for things to share on their social media, especially on LinkedIn. You want to show that you were there working with an event designer and trying to create things that are aligned with your brand and the message that you want to share, right? But also, I just like to create kind of like vignettes for people to have conversation. And so having areas of maybe some circular seating, having areas where people can kind of like venture off and maybe have those quieter conversations. Definitely important for those to have those kind of activations because people remember that. And these are also opportunities for anyone on your team to then have conversations with people in the room, right? Part of the event strategy should be knowing who is coming to your event and who has that influence and making sure your team is equipped to have conversations when the opportunity presents itself to make sure that you get that lead or get that meeting scheduled, get that donation, get that check, whatever it is. And your activations can help with that.
Creating what those vignettes, as you called it, I think another term is third spaces. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tahirah. Creating those spaces at the meeting are very important because that is sometimes where when you step out of a room, you need somewhere quiet to go, or you just need to do a quick, touch base meeting. That's where those things happen, to your point, and that's where money happens too. Like a lot of business deals happen in those in between sessions at a conference. So you're exactly right.
Yep.
When we look at the data side, because I know it gets on everyone's nerves, like, oh, events are supposed to be just fun. No, events are a business driver. The data tells the story, doesn't it? The data tells the story.
Yep.
So if an organization needs to prove the value of a smaller event to leadership or sponsors, what outcomes or data should they prioritize in sharing, and how should they tell their story through like a deck or some kind of video campaign or something like that?
I'll go back to what I originally said about if your money and your head count are your key indicators, you've already lost your plot, right? If you are launching a program, your KPIs should be aligned to how many signups you get. If you have a membership program, how many new members did you get? How many renewals did you get? These are the things that speak leadership's language. This is the thing about small events. This is where they really shine because small events give you the opportunity to curate more.
Mm-hmm.
And so with a smaller event, you may be more in control of the guest list and the attendee list and who you invite. And so you can be strategic about who you have in that room, going back to the decision makers, but not only the decision makers, have their trusted advisors in the room as well. And trusted advisors may not be people in the C-suite. Sometimes it's admin. Have a program that you've created. Maybe it's a software you've created that's going to help optimize operations in any company. And you think you want to have, you need the CEO in the room because the CEO, of course, would make that decision. But the CEO's admin, one is the gatekeeper to even get the CEO in the room to begin with. You need to treat Ms. Sheila right because she's not going to send that invite and put it on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Don't approach her the right way. But she also should be seeing that and should be in the room as well, because if she's going to be someone who's using that program, hearing it from her, the CEO is probably not going to use it. But hearing it from her, the CEO will be more inclined to make that purchase, to sign up, to renew membership, whatever it is, whatever that KPI is, because, oh, Sheila, someone whose opinion they trust, says, oh, that would be a great thing to add to the organization.
And I like how you mentioned Miss Sheila. Shout out to all the Miss Sheilas at every organization who've been holding it down
Yep.
for forever. Because I think people make the mistake at events, specifically corporate events that we're going to, stay focused on, about networking up instead of networking across, right? Because I think it's something where people see a title and they automatically associate a title with positions of power and how they can move into that position of power instead of paying attention to the coordinator, to the assistant, to the manager or senior manager, because those are the folks who keep the things going. A lot of times when the CEO gets all the information sent, it gets trickled down. It gets trickled down and eventually ends up in like the project lead's inbox or the coordinator to find out more about it or do something with it. When you ignore those people you don't see as important in the room, you're actually burning bridges before they were built.
Say it again.
Okay. When you ignore those people in the room, you're actually burning bridges before they were built.
Yep.
And that's so important, from whether you're attending a meeting with 10 people or 10,000 people. And
Mm-hmm.
be authentic too when you're engaging with folks. I cannot stand to hear, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if the first thing you say to me is you look at my badge and say, let's connect on LinkedIn. Why?
Yeah.
Why are we connecting? Because your invite, I will tell you right now, will sit there
Yeah.
the whole time because we didn't even have an authentic conversation. You just want to add to your network and then ask me for something instead of engaging with me authentically.
Trigger.
Ooh, is your pet peeve too?
Trigger. Well, that is something also that I realize some people feel awkward or they don't know what to do. And that I think is part of your event design as well. How do you get people to have more meaningful conversations? Right.
Mm.
There are tools that you can use. There are napkins that come with conversation starters. Really, really cute. Black-owned company, by the way.
Love that. What's the name of the company? Do you remember it?
Conversation nips.
Okay. Okay.
That. But you can also put that on your table. Have little conversation starter recommendations, prompts on your table if you're having something smaller or kind of around the room on signs. Also, I think that the entire event feel and how people are going to feel when they get in the room, it starts with even just the registration process. A lengthy registration process or something that just doesn't function well, people are already turned off. But your registration, once again, your strategy can start there because you can put in your registration form, in addition to name, email, all of that, put in a fun question, put in 3 fun questions to get to know the people that are going to be in the room. You know, favorite song, if you could be any animal, what would it be? What's your favorite food? And then bring that up when you're in the room with them. Hey, I noticed on your form that you put that you wanted to be a whale. I wanted to be a whale too. Right. And then you formed an actual connection with someone.
That's pretty cool. And another way to drive engagement with that too, just put on my marketing hat, you can take those fun answers in the pre-registration and have that instead of having the traditional slides that you see up there with all the company logos. You can put those fun answers up there, right? Like other people you know are in the room, and that could be a spark of conversation. Like maybe the answer could be next to someone's personal like headshot, and now you can see the person's headshot with their fun answer, and now you can actually have something to talk about when you walk up to that individual.
I love it. See, this is why planning and marketing, they go together.
Because we're both creatively crazy. So we are coming to the end of our interview, but I do have a couple sip and spill quick fire questions for you if you're down.
I'm down.
Okay, now these are top of the dome.
Okay.
Top of the dome, but just stand 10 toes down about your answer.
Okay, I will.
Okay. In your opinion, who is the best rapper or singer of all time?
I'm going to go rapper.
Okay.
I'm going to say Kendrick Lamar. Hear me out.
I agree. Go ahead.
I think that when we think of greatest of all time, we often think on the back end of someone's career. And, you know, they had their prime and we remember that time. And, you know, it doesn't mean that they're now a failure. It just means, you know, they've moved on. They're kind of soft retirement, a la a Jay-Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, Kendrick, it is very clear in his work, in his lyricism, in his music videos, in who he works with, that he has been studied. He has studied the Jay-Z's. He has studied NWA. He studied Tupac. He studied everyone's successes and failures, and he's putting that into his work now, which makes him the greatest of the current time for me. But that only means that somebody else is going to come along who's smart enough to study Kendrick and all the work that he did that was built on from the ones who came before him. And then that person will be the greatest. But for now, for me, it's Kendrick.
And there's evolution to artistry too. I think a smart artist, just like an event, evolves, right? You start out in one space, but as you continue to learn, you retool, you restructure, and you continue to build from there. Next question. If you can live in any city for a year, where would it be and why? And it could be global. It doesn't have to be the US.
So when I travel for work, I kind of use it as like an audition for the city. because I'm normally there for a couple of days and I sightsee to kind of get familiar with the area because somebody's always going to ask me, I need a Band-Aid. Where's the closest CVS? Or, they want to know the best coffee in the area. So I always try to get familiar and pretend that I'm living there, even though it's only for a few days. I've been to tons of cities, but I'm a water baby. I need to be by the water. And so Honolulu for me was the first time that I said, oh, I could do this. Imagine closing your laptop at the end of a long day and just saying, I'm about to go dip my toes
Mm.
in the ocean. That's the life for me right there.
That sounds nice. You can go find Nemo.
Yeah.
Shark Bait Bruja. Well, not shark. I don't do sharks. I don't
No.
do sharks. But that sounds nice. And I like how you framed it too, because work travel can be what you make of it. Like, we all roll our eyes like, oh God, I gotta go here again. But it gives you a chance to like try a new restaurant, support minority or inclusive owned businesses. And even too, to here, I had to go to Ohio. What was it? Last year? No, the year before last, 2024. I had to go there for a photo shoot for work. And I was like, dear God, I don't want to go to Cincinnati or Cleveland. I don't care. I ended up really liking it.
Don't they have
It was so charming.
a Hall of Fame there? And
Yes. And they had like a nice little street, felt like Gilmore Girls, and like the little ice cream shops. Even though it was cold, I still had some. Getting to our last two questions. It's been a long day. You kicked off your shoes. You got your fuzzy socks on, your good bonnet. What is your go-to comfort food after a long day?
I am a full-blooded Jamaican. Give me a beef patty anytime. It is comfort.
Now, are you going to make the beef patty, or are you buying it from somewhere?
I've never even had the thought to learn how to make a beef patty. I think I've just always assumed it's super complicated, so I just never. But I call myself a beef patty connoisseur. I judge any Jamaican restaurant on its beef patties.
Mm.
The ones that come from frozen, which is not a bad thing, but I could tell if you're just using like the 7-Eleven type, those are not beef patties. Or if you were real Jamaican and you're making some beef patties. So if you want a list of my favorite patties in the area, let me know.
See, I feel like Jamaicans and Caribbean people feel the same way that Black folks feel about soul food. We judge the mac and cheese very harshly. Like,
Your
we will
food's not
judge
better
it.
than my mom's. Why do you have a restaurant?
Exactly.
Oh.
See, for me to hear, it's like when I see the mac and cheese, it has to be like a ratio. You know what I mean? Like I need to be able to feel Big Mama's arms flapping when I lift it up out the plate.
It be heavy. It needs to be heavy.
It needs to be heavy. It needs to be good and thick. Okay, last question. If you were a coffee, like you have the Tahirah special, what kind of coffee would you be?
I think I would be a caramel macchiato. One, caramel macchiato was the drink that made me like coffee. I have grown up. I can do black coffee now. But macchiatos, they have the espresso at the bottom, of course, and it's extremely concentrated. But before you get there, you've got this sweet treat with the milk and the caramel. And so you're enjoying it. And then at the end, you kind of get, oh, there's coffee in there, there's espresso in there, and you're awake, right? And I feel like it's a little bit like my personality. You know me, so you've had the time to get to know me, but I don't give it to you all at once. It takes time for me to open up and share. And then once you do, you kind of get bits and pieces. And then once you see my full personality, you're like, oh, there's a whole being in there. And so to me, that's like a caramel macchiato.
I love that. And it also shows too that you can't like immediately write someone off because you don't think that they, match your vibe or something. Sometimes you have to give people a chance to show who they are, because not everyone's going to be the expressive person in the room who grabs all the attention. Like even right now to hear, and I know we're getting to the end of everything. When it comes to me and my personality, I know how to turn it on, but in reality, as soon as my social battery wears out, I'm like, okay,
yeah,
I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And my whole face will change, like, yeah. And I'll go.
My social battery takes a little bit more to turn on. But
well, I charge in the car. Like I have to get myself hype, or I'll take like a good nap. Like I took a nap before this, like a post work nap. So let me charge up. Like Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me for coffee. How can people find out more about you and your growing platform and business?
Yeah, so you can find me on all social media platforms at Bailey Reed Events. But the best place to come hang out with me is on my website. I've got a blog on there with some event tips and also showing you some of the work that I've done. And it's also the best place to get connected. You can submit a contact form. I'll get to you. Ask me whatever question you have about event strategy, and we'll see how we can work together and make some impact.
Awesome. And thank you so much to everyone for listening and watching. Thank you so much to Tahirah for joining me for coffee today, for me being your first ever
And
podcast
thank you
interview.
so much for having me. I feel so honored.
Yes, it was so much fun. And for those of you who are listening or watching, I hope you enjoyed today's chat. Don't forget to follow Coffee with Yvonne on IG and Threads at Coffee with Yvonne for my personal account where I cut up who I am in real life as Tahirah actually knows. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok, aka the Clock app, at Yvonne_creative marketer. To learn more about me and my business, you can go ahead and find me at pinkdollhousemarketing.com and on Instagram at pinkdollhousemarketing. You can slide into my DMs. That's cool. And creatives, I know I say this to you each and every week, but I'm going to keep saying till you get it. To remember to keep showing up, keep creating, and that your voice matters. I cannot wait to chat with you soon on another episode of Coffee with Yvonne. You did great! Yay! Coffee with Yvonne is produced and edited by Yvonne Pearson. Coffee with Yvonne is created by Pink Dollhouse Marketing. You can catch the latest episodes by subscribing to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.